First question I want to ask is, if you had to write a letter to your younger self, what would you say?
Fear is power. Fear is strength.
Fear of what, Bob?
Lean into your fear. Fear of everything, right?
Okay.
You know, my younger self was, pick a point, you know, an age point, but my younger self was always scared. I think my older self is too, but now I see it and I own it and I embrace it and I use it. So I think that I would tell my younger self to be very mindful of how you react to fear and to slow down. And when you think you're slow enough, you're still moving too fast.
Okay. What does slowing down do for you?
Slowing down creates non-reactivity. And for me, and for folks that I talk to and work with, it allows you to really look inside yourself and hear the voice of your soul and be able to distill out what you truly want and what calls to you from the external goals that we chase. So I like to ask myself, you know, am I winning, right? Am I chasing some external goal or am I effing winning, right?
Okay.
And if I'm effing winning, then I'm winning from in here. So stillness and slow allows me to hear inside myself.
Give me an example how that played out when you were younger, and now if you could go back and change history, how that would be impacted.
So I'm a big believer that I'm a domino guy. So if you start putting the dominoes back up and knocking them down again, things will end up somewhere else. So I'm good where I am, you know, in the moment. But understanding that we all do that, if I could go back in time, what would I do differently?
Right.
You know, I was talking to you about this before we started filming, and I think back to day one of law school. And if you had told me that I would get to where I got to in my legal career, and I would, you know, try a lot of cases and win them, you know, hit the biggest malicious prosecution civil rights verdict in Pennsylvania history, and walking out of the courtroom on that day, I'd say to myself, there's something else out there for me, this isn't it. I would have said you're out of your mind.
Okay.
Right? So an example is that a lot of, and I had, you know, a lot of great times and joy from being a lawyer, but there are a lot of parts about it that, you know, I would change and shift. And so I think that a lot of that had to do with how we look about things as our younger selves, which is winning, right? So when I sat in that first day of law school, it was about what are people gonna think of me? You know, am I gonna win? You know, am I gonna succeed, right? How will the external world see me? Will I be enough? Will I be good enough, right? That's where the fear comes in. You know, am I gonna be enough? You know, people are gonna see me as being good enough. And I think that's a lot of why in every field, whether it's sports, you know, whether it's entertainment, whether it's, you know, being a carpenter, a doctor, a plumber, particularly when we're young, and I think always, a lot of times we're answering to the external. For me, I think the pivotal point one for me was when I realized that, you know, when you're practicing law, you're confronting all kinds of fears every day, particularly the kind of law I was practicing, standing up in front of a jury, speaking to 12 strangers and trying to persuade them, representing somebody who's sitting next to you, you know, in a room full of people that are judging you, right? And they're gonna judge your client based on what you do. And there's a ton of, you know, fear and insecurity and anxiety that comes along with that. And for the first big chunk of my career, I kind of muscled my way through that, you know, and I got by on hard work and some talent. But the turning point for me was when I realized that if I don't lean into that stuff and acknowledge the fear and the anxiety, I'll never become the best litigator I can be. And I think that turning point applies, you know, for a lot of people. So as I leaned into that and I, you know, realized no matter how many cases I try, I'm gonna feel scared and anxious when I walk in the courtroom. It's not gonna go away. And when you start to realize that and you start to lean into the fact that, you know, it's gonna be really bad if you lose. And it's gonna feel, you know, shitty to walk out of the courtroom. But that's not gonna make me better when I'm doing it.
Right.
And so that was a pivotal point. And then I started applying that in the law. And then I started applying it in other areas of my life. And then I, at some point, realized that, I want to take this to a different place, and I want to expand the mindset and bring it to other people and talk about it and coach and try to provide the guidance and leadership that I can.